Well, welcome back to TuckerAllen Live. I'm Scott Trout, and I, of course, will be your moderator for today as we bring you information with our TuckerAllen employees and attorneys. And today is no different as I'm joined by Kevin up in the Kansas City area. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me today, Scott.
Well, as usual, we want to talk about a topic that affects a lot of people and really is interesting, and today is really no different. We were talking off camera about this subtopic that I found actually really interesting because America is filled with small business owners. And, middle America, we have someone who owns a gas station, a small restaurant, a small little boutique shop. This is right up their alley. We're going to talk about small business succession. And that's the one thing that you don't really think a lot about. You think about maybe your personal things, you think about what you do with your stuff, but the question really becomes, and is an estate plan critical for a small business owner? And that's the question I'm going to throw to you now.
Sure. So I would say, that an estate plan is something that everyone needs to have. It would be critical for everyone, but it is especially important if you're a small business owner. So one thing to kind of remember, especially as a small business owner, is that state law, it's going to decide what happens with your business after you pass away. If you don't have an estate plan, that state law is what steps in. They're going to step in and say, this is what's going to happen with your assets, one of your assets being your business. A lot of times, it depends on where you live, but kind of generally speaking here, in a lot of states, what the government will do, the state government, they're going to split that asset up. So a lot of times they split assets and they'll give half to a spouse and half to children if you do not have an estate plan. And, for a small business, that's not something that you really want, is to have your small business split between two different beneficiaries here. That can create a lot of problems and turmoil in just the running of a small business like that.
So we talk about an estate plan, and I know I try to not use those words because then when they're going to say, well, what does that really mean, Kevin? So trust. Is a trust really a better mechanism to have when you have a small business?
Sure. So, yeah, like you're saying, kind of the two different types of estate plans you can have. On one side would be a will, and maybe the other side over here is a trust. And for a small business owner, I would say trust is a much better path to take because, we've talked about this before, but a will doesn't actually keep your assets out of probate. And your small business would be one of those assets, so it would have to go through the probate court if you have a will. And your will tell the probate judge, what to do with the small business, but the small business is still going to have to go through that process. Whereas if we have a trust, then we can keep that small business outside of probate court. And probate court is hard on everyone, but it's especially hard on that small business because, the judge is going to have to approve expenses for your business at that point. They're going to have to approve maybe what you're paying employees. They're going to have to check over the income stream. They're going to have to see everything. And that's just a lot of times, generally, that the person who's trying to run the business now is going to be stuck dealing with, someone like me, a probate attorney, or they're going to be stuck in probate court. And that's just not where we want you to be if you're trying to run a business.
You raise a good point about running your business because then, naturally, I have my wife perhaps as the trustee of my estate. And so I'm thinking maybe my wife isn't involved in the business at all. Maybe that's not something she ever wants to do in the event I pass away. I mean, it's probably likely the last thing she'd ever want to do if I own a business is do that. So the question is if I name her as my trustee, does that mean she has to run the business?
Sure. So if you have a trust and your spouse is the sole trustee, or if you didn't take our advice maybe and you had a will and the spouse was the sole executor of the will, then yeah, it's going to be on them. They're going to be in control of that asset at that point. It's going to be on them to run it and make decisions about, profits and how much we're paying people and what direction we're taking the business and things like that. And if you're saying, your spouse, they're not wanting to be involved with that, or maybe you had a child as a beneficiary, but the child isn't involved in the business either. And, what we would suggest in that case is, let's set up co-trustees for this. Let's have one co-trustee that's, like you're saying, your spouse or child or a close friend or something, and let's put them in charge of all of your, maybe your more like liquid financial assets or your personal property, your home, those sorts of things. So, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your home, your personal property, your vehicles. Let's make sure that they're in charge of all of that stuff. But then, maybe at this business that you own, you have an employee that's very trusted. They've been with you from the beginning. They're the vice president, or maybe they're the co-owner of the business. That might be a lot better person to have as a co-trustee only for your business, though, not for the rest of your assets, but just have them in charge of running your business, just because they do know the day-to-day. That's where they work. They understand the ins and outs of this. And especially, if you're on the same page as this person, then I think it would be a great idea.
And you bring up again, we talk about this every Friday. We talk about it in our virtual town halls, and that is the customizability. That you can, that's the beautiful thing of doing the trust and making sure that it does what you want it to do.
I wasn't really avoiding it, but I'm pretty good at procrastinating. I needed a trust. When I found TuckerAllen, all our questions were answered, all of our fears allayed.
You want your wishes in place, so there's no guessing, no stress on the children.
Basically, they talk about what you need, what's important to you. It was more conversational, really very simple.
And it kind of brings up the question I have is, some companies, some of these small businesses, they're either an LLC or they have stock. So what do you do with that? What's the key for people, John down the street who's got, the Amoco station, what does he do with the stock or the LLC?
Sure. So what we would do is, again, I'm going to push hard for you to have a trust if you're a small business owner. So I'm kind of going to talk in that realm right now. But like you're saying, if we have an LLC, or maybe it's an S corporation, which is just a type of corporation that would have a stock more of, we're saying like less than 100 shareholders or something. So what somebody would do in that situation, what we would do is that we would want the business, the LLC, or your portion of the LLC or the corporation to either be, one, owned by your trust, or then two, we would make it TOD, so transfer on death, that LLC or your stock into your trust upon your death. And so that's, whenever we're doing that transfer, the TOD, that's kind of more where we would get into like a membership agreement or something like that. And honestly, we have people come in here sometimes that they own a small business, but they don't have an LLC yet, or they don't have an S corporation or something like that. So that's also, and an estate plan, that's something we're going to sit down and want to talk about. If you've got a small business, but you don't have it, you don't have that LLC protection or the corporation protection, that's also something we would want to talk with you about and be like, hey, this is really something you should think about, just because there are advantages, especially with being able to transfer that ownership upon your passing. So that's also something that we can take care of here.
Again, we said it last week, and I feel like I'm repetitive, but as you talk about this and about the plan, it's so critical that you put the plan together and gather your professionals, whether you have an accountant, a CPA. Let's talk about what your succession plan is. Let's get your financial advisor. What's going to happen, and so then get your estate planning attorney together and get those three people and you in a room, and let's make the right plan, which includes, what happens? Do you want to sell the business after death? Do you want it to continue after death, right? You want to put that together and have that discussion with the people that you surround yourself with to ensure that your wishes continue, right?
Absolutely. This is a collaborative thing that we're doing here. We definitely would want to be sitting down with that CPA and with that financial advisor and with you. And, if potentially maybe even a beneficiary potentially, or not a beneficiary, but maybe somebody who you might want to continue to run the business afterwards. And we would want everybody to be on that same page going, just moving forward. It's like anything else. You want to have all your boxes checked here. You don't want to, you want to make sure that everyone knows your wishes, and that whenever we can work with everyone in this collaborative environment, then it makes it so much easier, because I'm not off on my end doing something that then the CPA is on their end doing something. And then the CPA might look at me and be like, oh, well, I'm doing this, which doesn't make sense now with what you're doing. And we get to avoid all of that whenever we can sit down and have that collaborative environment.
And it's huge. I mean, you think about it, everything you've worked hard for, you build this business and you want it either to be a legacy for your family, your kids, your relatives, whomever, your friends. Mm-hmm. And that is, I mean, it's in your interest to take these steps and do what you really, really want done with it, you know, whatever that may be. It may be a directive to sell the assets and then distribute the money, who knows? But what if there are co-owners? That's always a question. We were talking about something that's amazing that, wow, I never thought about this. What about co-owners? What do you do?
Sure. So if you're a co-owner with somebody who's not, you know, your spouse, then, or your child, you know, if it's, you know, if you and I, we owned a construction company mm-hmm. together maybe, and we're both part owners in this, I might come to you and say, you know, hey, Scott, I really think that we should think about maybe taking out like life insurance policies for each other, for our business here. So then what we can do is if I pass away before you, you might not have enough because me and you, we have a good construction company here. We make some money. And you might not have enough just cash lying around to be able to buy me out because, you know, maybe my family, my children, my spouse, they don't want to continue. They don't have any interest in this construction company and they would want to buy us out. And, you know, you don't want to have them go and sell it to their half of this company to who knows who. You might not want to work with that person. So another thing that I would want to talk with someone about is to say, hey, let's think about getting your co-owner in here too. And let's talk about the advantages of setting up these life insurance policies for each other while you're both still, you know, once you retire or if you guys both sell the business, then we don't need these anymore. But whenever you're at least working together, because we want to be able to give you the option to buy back that company, you know, and have the ownership of it without having to share it with, you know, this person's spouse or have the spouse selling it to someone other than you. So that's just another thing that we would want to put on your radar.
So, you know, I know we talk about it again, this legacy protection program. Mm-hmm. And how does that play into our conversation today to help small business owners or just business owners as they think about the transferring of their interest into something that can at least be a stopgap right now? And I know it's been a big hit. And I was just talking with someone last week about the legacy protection program, and they were just like, I want to sign up. And I'm like, well, call TuckerAllen, they'll get you on board. So talk about how that can help people watching this if they have this issue that they want help with.
Sure. So I would say that the legacy protection program is exceptionally important for small business owners just because you get that yearly review where I'm going to sit down, or one of the other attorneys, we're going to sit down, we're going to look through your documents, we're going to call you up and make sure that we're going to go through our summary, make sure it all still sounds good to you because, you know, with a small business, there's going to be, the situation's more fluid maybe than it is just for like a nuclear family where you might be selling assets that now you don't own this asset anymore in your company and we don't need to have these documents for it. Or, you know, at some point maybe you want to retire and you want to sell your portion of the company. So there's just going to be more changes to your estate plan whenever there's a small business involved. And then, you know, kind of you get some benefits too whenever you join the program. Like I was talking about earlier, how we can transfer ownership of the small business into the trust, or we can make those transfer on death documents for you. So, you know, whenever you join the legacy protection program, we either do one or two of those documents for you that first year, and then we're going to keep reviewing it each year with you, which I just think is incredibly important for a small business owner.
Oh, it's huge. This person I was talking to, they had acquired some assets since they did their package, not with TuckerAllen. And they're like, well, I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, well, legacy protection program. I think for anyone that either it has not done their plan or has done their plan, or they have a small business, or they have a business. I mean, it goes across the board. It's a great program. And so great. I'm glad you brought it up. And so anyway, thanks for joining again on TuckerAllen Live. Same time, same place. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, again, as always, we're here at the same time, same place, 1 o'clock. We go ahead and do Facebook and we do TuckerAllen Live. So thanks for joining. And we'll see you next Friday. But make sure, go to TuckerAllen.com and make sure to sign up for the virtual town hall that's coming up again in March. You want to get more information and engage and interact live with the attorneys with Tucker Allen. You can ask questions and get answers right then and right there. But between now and then, tune in next Friday. We'll see you again at 1 o'clock right here on Facebook.